I'd like to call the order of the Thursday, March 16th, 2017 meeting of the Granada Community Services District. And may we have a roll call? Here. Here. Present. Here. Present. And we have time for one. We have one speaker, Steve, Mr. Stockton. Yes. Speak.
I just came this evening to introduce myself.
Okay.
I'm a newly appointed board member to the Coastside Fire Board. Who quit? Harvey got put to the city council for his position, right? So positions change on the coast side. And really, I'm just here to say that from my observation of the boards, and I would describe as a strong and beneficial relationship, and as a new board member, and as a longtime El Granada resident, and really as a vocal proponent of the new fire station that we want to build in El Granada. I say I appreciate that fact and the relationship that's here. So, thanks for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, Jim, I was also going to say in this meeting that we had a close session.
Yeah, wait,
You're going there, okay. And no reportable actions taken.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
If I could just make just one mention.
Yes.
I just wanted to say we've had several meetings with lots of people from your fire board, and everything has been just extremely cordial, beneficial, supportive. It's been going real well on how to work all the new buildings in and the different plots here. So we've all been very encouraged that everything's been working out so well.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Okay. So we're excited. The first agenda item is consideration of ordinance amending the district ordinance code relating to parks and other district property regulations and related enforcement provisions. First reading.
So I'm going to be doing the staff report, a couple of aspects I'm going to ask Heather to provide the information. But first of all, this is another first reading because at the last board meeting there were a lot of things discussed, and we've now put into this version what was discussed then. But we didn't have any details about the drone question, and we've also, since we heard from the county on the medians permit, as they call it, we've added language on the first page here of this ordinance 35103. The definition of district park includes not only land that we own or lease or maintain, but also land that we improve or hold by permit. So that's why that's in there on the first one, because that's how we would be holding medians and plazas is by permit and by virtue of improvements that we're making on it. Then at the top of the next page is, in addition to the definition of district property, because for the purposes of the, what I'm calling the zones ordinance, we're also including within district property district airspace. And the word navigable should be spelled N-A-V-I-G-A-B-L-E, so we would correct that. And the other thing that's going on here is that it says airspace above, so it says that it's just all airspace below the navigable airspace, because the navigable airspace is regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration. So if it's above district property and it's not navigable airspace, then the change that needs to be made there is it says district property, and we are inserting, now I think you put it as district property or parks, as opposed to parks, which were parks and property and parks. So that's going to come up when Natalie gets going into the details of the zone part of this, but that's going to be a general change that we ended up making because when we were just saying district property, We thought that was going to include the medians and the plazas, but what the county is giving us is not a property interest. So that's why we're having to add and parks every place that we think that.
So that goes in the quotation marks at the top?
District property? Yeah, what, so,
But shouldn't it say district owned or managed parks or something like that? I mean, this Quarry Park is a park, but it's not under our control.
well, we have a definition of district parks in the park on the prior page. So it's only something that is owned, leased, maintained, improved, or held by permanent by us.
Right,
So
but,
not include Quarry Park.
okay, but if you put at the end of 35104, if you put parks without qualifying it, then it applies to all parks.
You mean district parks.
Yeah.
So we'd say district property or district parks or and district parks.
That's what I think it should say.
I'm open to that. It's rare that I'm ever trying to stop additional words from being added.
That's why we like him, he's honest.
Okay. Down at the bottom of that page is 35110, which I guess, Natalie, I'll take that part too and move you to the part where we actually regulate this. But it's a definition of unmanned aerial system, so we added that, which is a drone, but it's more than a drone, as you'll see. It includes model aircraft, quadcopters, which I've heard of, what they are, and drones.
Okay, tell me how this doesn't apply to a kite.
Because it's got to be motorized and pilot or system operator in command.
Where does it
Via
say?
camera, sensors,
Where
communication.
does it say?
That's the definition.
Where does it say motorized?
Doesn't say motorized.
Well, that would,
But it may not have to be
it
motorized,
wouldn't be,
because it's operated by camera, sensors, or communication links. But, I mean, maybe that needs improvement.
I wouldn't say a kite has a pilot, it's a system operator.
It has an operator. It's the guy at the bottom end of the string.
Maybe kites don't actually have flight. What's the definition of flight? Birds fly with power. Kites have no power of their own.
Do you fly a hot air balloon? Got power. The hot air.
Yeah, we can bring this back for another. Next month. If you would like, while we check
the first reading.
This
can bring
was
it back.
adopted, I believe, by the Santa Clara County Open Space Authority.
I just want to make sure that we're not restricting kites.
Okay, sure.
No, I did have a conversation.
Well, the device that's used or intended to be used for flight without the possibility of direct human intervention would not be a kite if you need direct
Okay.
human intervention.
All right. It's old.
Okay, so I'm going to move along. I'm not going to cover all of these unless somebody has questions about them. But I'm up to 35609, domestic animals. And this was what we understood the board wanted. But I guess there was still some uncertainty about certain aspects of it. So we want to make sure we get this right before we come back for a second reading. So, no, and then we've eliminated dogs from that sentence because we're going to address dogs in the next sentence.
I just want to know how you're going to restrict cats and fowls from the train.
Well, we'll have breeding.
Drones.
It just makes it unlawful.
All right, 2 points for Chuck.
All right, let's focus on the dog. No dog shall be permitted to enter a district park or recreation area unless the dog is upon a secure leash held continuously in the hands of a person capable of controlling the dog, except in designated non-leash areas. In a designated non-leash area. Have we got that? Is that what people want? I mean, we understood the purpose here was to allow dogs on leashes, but not off leashes. And So assuming that was the goal,
I don't remember where the rest of the board was on this, but I was pushing for us having something that was essentially the same as San Mateo County's leash ordinance that prohibits the extensible ones. Because if your dog is 20 feet away from you, many of us don't consider that to be on leash.
But it's capable of controlling the dog.
Not really, not at 20 feet. That's why the county.
But he's not
that's why the county
capable of
doesn't
controlling the dog that would be illegal.
The county says fixed leash at 6 feet. That's their definition of on leash.
it would certainly be more enforceable if that's the board's goal, is to have it no more than 6 feet to actually say that. If you try to enforce this in terms of capable of controlling the dog,
If you don't,
that's a 10-week trial.
the folks are going to bring the extensibles in. So if we don't want that, you should specify it in there that it has to be 6 feet or non-extensible or whatever.
My thinking on that was and is that can we refer to the county's rules on leashes?
Or could you just say, unless the dog is upon a secure leash not exceeding 6 feet? Yeah. That would do the same thing.
I'd rather do that than refer it to somebody else as well if they got to go look at it.
I think
It should be simple as we can.
I think Natalie got it because the original wording Natalie sent to me, we get the weird legal land. It read the dog should be on a leash, where the dog should get been carrying the leash in its mouth.
Yeah.
So we went all legal on it. So,
Okay, so I'm going to add not exceeding 6 feet in length. Okay, firearms. We left the county's language temporarily.
What section number?
356.14. So we've done some research on that, and now we're going to report because the board members had questions about what's the state of the law here on firearms in parks.
Hello. So there's a couple questions that came up last month. One of them was whether a prohibition on firearms in parks violated the Second Amendment. And another question was whether it was preempted by state law. So we looked into these. Most of these rules come from the Penal Code, and generally firearms are prohibited on public property. The exception is if the county issues a license for a concealed carry of a firearm. So people who have received that license from the county, that does not apply to them. Most jurisdictions tend to prohibit firearms in parks, but the district does have the authority to allow firearms. The Penal Code grants them discretion to determine if that's something that they can prohibit in properties where they are the managing agency. So this becomes a little complicated here where, for instance, in the medians, some of them maybe we are the managing agency and somewhere the county may be. So our recommendation is to add a sentence at the end of this, section 356.14, that says, unless otherwise provided by state law, possession of firearms are prohibited. And so this would deal with the situation where people with the permit are exempt from the prohibition, and it also is consistent with the county's prohibition on firearms in their parks.
And it also would capture the statutes.
Okay.
Is it possible to get a concealed carry license for a crossbow?
So that's why we would add the sentence at the end and only
That's fine.
specifically refer to firearms. I don't know how you could conceal a crossbow.
One of the reasons I'm pushing back on this is because San Mateo County actually has one of the most restrictive laws that I've heard of, except for New York City. There was a group of people called Open Carry that were strapping unloaded guns to their hip, and San Mateo County prohibited that, which to me is just a gross violation of the Second Amendment. So I don't think we should be getting anywhere near any arguable position that this is infringing on the First Amendment. And the way this is written, the way this is written, this would actually prohibit gun shows. It would prohibit any kind of thing like that, even if they're not loaded. And, I have to say, I don't own a gun. It's unlikely that I ever will, but this country only exists because the Second Amendment didn't exist in 1776. If restrictions like this had existed in 1776, we would still be British subjects. And so I'm just always going to argue against these kind of restrictions.
Against allowing guns?
Against the restrictions as written here.
I'll take the opposite stand. There are national parks prohibited guns, state parks prohibited guns.
What's the language?
The way you're phrasing it is we're prohibiting it unless a higher authority allows the permission to do so.
And that's
people run around here with guns and our medium strips and stuff like that.
And that's consistent with what San Mateo does and some of the other areas around here. That same language.
The language that it has now was copied from the County of San Mateo. The additional language would provide clarity that state law allows, has an exception in circumstances where a license is granted by the county.
There's been a recent court case in one of the states, I thought it was Maryland or something, where the jury or the judge actually ruled that there's nothing in the Constitution that allows you to run around with automatic weapons. And that's, starting this precedent again that you can't just say it's Second Amendment right so I can carry cannons around or anything like that. So, there are reasons for the Second Amendment, and that was to have an organized militia with a bunch of muskets running around. And I think that's been stretched as far as it needs to stretch already, but I think we're adequately covered because we don't want to allow something and then get involved with, then the county says no. So I'm perfectly happy with everything that's come out so far.
I would add my view, and I would like to be as consistent as possible with the exact wording that other local agencies are using in their same exact documents. If they're not addressing it or if they're going into detail, I would like ours to be consistent with that. So I think if we take a stand either way, it could open us up to liability either way. You say, okay, guns are allowed, and then something happens. You say guns aren't allowed, and then people say that, well, that event happened because you're restricting guns. And so it's just one of those things where I feel like this is an example that just model the language off of.
So I'd be shocked if we would find any municipality that expressly says guns are allowed out on the street, unless Texas maybe.
Yeah. Well, okay. What about other local parks agencies in California?
I don't have the exact language in front of me, but my understanding is most parks prohibit firearms.
Yeah, like I said, I'd be shocked to find them that did.
All right, well, I'll let it go. Just note for the record that I'm not particularly happy with it. Do we know why all the nut jobs go shoot up schools? Because they know there's nobody there to shoot back.
That's not true.
Let's not go down.
Let's go ahead. Yeah, keep moving. Thank you, Natalie. Okay.
There was that whole nut job preface.
So we have more.
By definition.
So actually, Natalie, we should let you sit down because the next section that I'm going to bring up here is section 363, which is the new language about the regulation of model aircraft. We're saying drones and other UAS.
Yes, and the UAS definition is taken from the FAA's regulations. So this is, as Jonathan mentioned, it was a policy that I drafted for another one of our clients, which is an open space district. I understand the issues might be a little bit different with the park, but I think generally the same rules can apply. When you get into the area of drones, you have to be careful with preemption issues because they are regulated by the FAA, and so that's why we've specified district airspace as anything that is not the FAA's jurisdiction, which is navigable airspace. But we also do have the power to prohibit acts on our property, and so that's why we've prohibited launching, landing, or operating UAS.
Doesn't that need to say above instead of on?
Which airspace?
In 36101A?
No, because we're prohibiting the conduct on our actual property. So rather than within the airspace, so it's the act of me controlling my drone. That's prohibited because there's much more discretion for us to regulate the acts that occur on the property rather than, I think generally navigable airspace is above 30 feet. And so it's hard to...
Navigable? No, navigable is like 500 feet.
Oh, 500. Well, it also depends on, traditionally, it depends on if you're taking off or landing.
But my concern is somebody could be standing outside of district property and flying the drone over our park. I don't think.
Isn't that B though?
Yeah, so that would be under B.
Under this.
So the version that you have in front of you, we made a couple changes. As Jonathan mentioned, there's a couple global changes. One of them is instead of referring to district property, we've called it district property and parks to cover both situations where it's the property that we own and property that we may operate pursuant to a permit. The other global change that we've made is instead of referring to a policy, everywhere that it says policy has been changed to section.
It's been changed
to the word section.
Not on yours, but we're going to change it.
Yes, I have the changed versions.
The board members would like to see the changed versions, but the problem is that it's all the same color, in other words.
Right.
So, I'm happy to pass it out, but
It's just semantics, right?
yeah.
So it's not material.
I'm sorry, I missed the original definition of UAS.
That's back on page. That's the one that Leonard was wondering whether it included a kite.
No.
And delighted to learn this is the definition from the FAA, so undoubtedly not changing.
Okay.
So, a couple more changes that we're recommending being made to the version that you have before you are 36301C. D. We'd like to change the language to say a UAS shall not be used to harass, follow, or intimidate another member of the public, just to specify that it's with a UAS. And
make sure to get the comment in there.
of course, we'll put your Oxford. And
Thank you.
in addition, we've provided for method to gain a permit, so you can't allow someone to operate a drone or UAS if they comply with certain factors, and the permit contains these listed conditions. So another change that we're recommending is it's halfway down the page. It says all permits will include the following conditions. We'd like to change that to shall. And
where?
It's paid. And in addition, on letter H, we'd like to specify areas for launch, landing, and operation. So, going back to the rules as a whole, there are certain exceptions. So those exceptions are provided in case of emergency, for search and rescue operations, and law enforcement. And it also specifies that in any situation, if California law or federal law preempts the statute, that will prevail. And because this is a new area of regulation, there's possibility of new federal regulations and state legislation coming down.
I was also going to suggest on J, which is the last page of this, where it says UAS will not be thrown directly with people, blah, 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 or endanger the life and property. And I was going to suggest this as life, health, or property. Because we don't have to kill somebody.
Injury. That's right. Good point. Thank you.
How about pets?
We're prohibited that somewhere against animals.
So when you say health, could you use safety instead of health?
Yes. We could do both.
So you recommend that we include safety in there as well?
Yeah, health is arguable, safety is less arguable.
Okay, so that's it on drones.
Okay.
There are questions.
Okay, Natalie.
Go on here, down to section 360, we're missing 361.
Thanks.
So Chuck is pointing out that there is no 361, and maybe we should renumber.
Or you could say no. You could just
Section
leave.
361 intentionally omitted.
There you go.
You never know when to insert something. And I don't like
It's
that.
actually handy to do that because then you discover with ordinances that you come along later, there's something new that comes up.
Right.
Where do I put it?
And then you end up with these decimal point numbers.
Right. If you don't,
It's really annoying.
Section 361 is not currently enforced.
It's like writing code.
You know, the county has whole.
You have taught her well. That's good.
The county has whole zoning chapters that are numbered things like 12.1, 12.2.
12.1.1.8.
Oh, yeah, and I also wanted to share that I did speak with Scott Lombardi, who I gather has attended some of our meetings, is with the county parks department, because at the last meeting, the board wanted to know, was that even an option in terms of enforcement to contract with the county to have their park rangers do enforcement. So we probably aren't going to have much, but I did talk to him today. He said I'm authorized to say that he would be open to it. He would have to run it by some higher ups. But it seems like maybe it couldn't wait for us to do something like that because we have so little enforcement. And he was talking about how they enforce first is with education and discussion, etc. But occasionally you do have to write a citation.
I would just say realistically, I belong to a couple parks organizations. They are so understaffed. They got one ranger covering 4 state parks, that kind of thing. We could do that, but the likelihood of them leaving 4 state parks to drive over on a median is, I guess, pretty low. They have so much work already until they staff up.
Yeah, and we're still looking into the contract enforcers. It just, they actually have come over to Fort Park to say 3 or 4 times where they've actually had the right citation. So they've done that. So it seems like they have the kind of experience that might be better than a contract enforcer.
The Rangers have guns too.
Actually, I'm not sure they do. Somebody at the last meeting said they didn't. Okay, anyway, so that's our recommendation on the parks property and enforcement ordinance. And so we will be asking the board to First of all, the title has already been read. President Vine should do that. We need a motion to waive full reading of the ordinance, and this will be the first reading, so waiving first reading, so let's take care of that motion.
And so moved.
Second.
Can I make a comment?
Walk, please.
Here's a global one, commencing on page 2, ordinance is misspelled at the top of each page. In this final one, so, in all the versions I've seen, 356.04, you have archaeological spelled the federal way, and at 356.08, you have it spelled the correct way. They should be.
Go back and see if the county did that.
They might have. Yeah, that's how the feds still do it. This came about during the Depression, honestly, when they were trying to shorten words so they wouldn't use so much paper and ink.
Are you serious that that's the correct spelling?
It's from Greek. That's the correct spelling.
Okay, well, I guess we have to go by the registered archaeologist.
If only we had a registered archaeologist.
More concern is way at the end, section 807. Do these three, does number 1 and number 3, do they contradict each other? Or is this just giving the general manager this discretion that he can decide to do either what's in 3 or what's in 1?
Well, 80701 says misdemeanor, but then 80703 says, the general manager is saying, that was only an infraction.
Right. So it's giving the general manager the
But first he has to define it as a misdemeanor. Right. And then he can decide it's an
I
infraction.
think we've made any criminal violation here as a misdemeanor now. And then,
So I can reduce it to an infraction.
Right.
Not that you would.
Got that God power that Rick used to have.
well, I guess I'll share that I learned a new term a few years ago. Many of us have probably heard of the term wobbler, which is a criminal charge which can be a felony or a misdemeanor. And it's called a wobbler if you reduce it. Well, these are called wobblets. When you reduce from misdemeanor.
Wow. The Oxford Common, now the wobblet.
Yes,
it's close to
I hadn't heard of wobbler. The 2 spellings of archaeologists.
So you need to Scrabble.
Okay, fine.
All this stuff.
Deep in the weeds.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I like
We will do one more spell check, and that is something you can change, as you probably know, from the first reading to the second reading. Clerical errors and typos can be corrected. But so we still haven't had a vote on the voting.
No, I'm waiting for any more comment here. Okay, so ready to vote? All in favor of the first reading?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay, so now we need a motion to actually approve this proposed ordinance subject to adoption after second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, so it's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you very much, Natalie. Okay. Going to our second item. Is, again, go ahead.
You want to read the title on that one, too?
Yes. Is consideration of an ordinance amending the district ordinance code relating to sewer permit variances for non-conforming parcel, non-conforming parcel, second reading.
I think that there's still an editing issue with.
Right, but we're recommending that you have this another first reading, and that the word non-conformity be stricken.
Yeah. And so that change means that it has to start over at first reading? Okay. So what would the appropriate
I would have said
motion?
it could be a clerical error, except that I've looked at my notes, Natalie's looked at hers, we looked at the minutes, there was no mention of removing the word non-conformity. And it actually creates a different meaning, but at least the potential.
Completely.
For,
Well, that's why I suggested the alternate language that is in the rest of this.
Right.
So I thought that during that discussion, that nonconformity would have gone away.
Well, we could go back and listen to the tape. Nobody's done that. It's not taking any longer disk. There is not a need that, to have this adopted tonight.
I think it's better to have belts and suspenders, I think. On this.
Where did the 64% come from?
It's actually 60%.
It used to say non-conformity at 40%, and then we changed it to 60%. So it should say where the size of the subject parcel is less than 60% of the minimum parcel size, the district can make the finding. So
Since I was gone a month or so, when you say if the subject parcel is less than 60% of the minimum size, the district can only make the finding that provision of sewer service would not affect it.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of negatives, but that is the finding.
But the operative part is where it says by placing a condition.
I mean, it sounds to me like you were saying if the parcel is less than 60%, you have to make the finding that this is perfectly all right.
No, you have to read the whole sentence.
And so I kept going around that circle.
So we're going to revise this and come back to
Well,
it.
no, we should revise it now if you want to revise it further, because I agree that it's complicated, it's a long sentence. The reason I put all of that language in there is because that is the specific finding that we're required to make.
in the variance
In the
ordinance?
variance, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a finding that if we don't make that finding, then it's not approved. Okay.
So, John, specifically, what's the specific component we're changing from before to now?
We're just removing the word nonconformity. Because...
But even as far as this, that we're changing, how does it read before? There was nothing in there addressing this, or where's the language before?
This is a new section. See, it says amended by adding section 60303B.
Well, no, where Chuck said it was 40% before. Where'd that come from?
I think it actually made somewhat more sense when it said the size nonconformity is 40% or greater, is what it used to say.
Yeah, but that's incomprehensible to anybody.
So I said, well, if it was 90%, it's greater than 40%. Directionally one head. So we changed it to this.
Yeah, I want
this
language that ordinary people might be able to understand.
So I think maybe it would help if we drop down and indent it after you say can only make the finding and then indent it and quote it. And then go back to the margin and then say, so it's telling you, this is the finding. We can
I
only
think it
make.
separates it out.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So the indented part would be, start with that provision and end with local coastal program?
Yes.
All right, I think that helps a lot.
So I'm recommending that we table it. Well, no, actually, the revised version has a first reading.
First reading.
I think we better have a motion.
The double motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
A motion to do what?
Waive the full reading.
So
It's different,
So basically, it would be retitled and waive by motion the reading of the ordinance. So move that.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so where did the agreement come on the 2 bedrooms? Where was that? When was that agreed to?
the last meeting.
Because as far as I remember, nothing was agreed to. We discussed things and things got discussed, but there wasn't.
It was 4-1.
It's in the minutes.
3-1.
That specifically on 2 bedrooms. You were talking about 1 bedroom.
Yeah, the 1 bedroom
Before.
we did not include because we're going to talk to Chuck about it. And as I recall the minutes, you proceed and go to the district.
But because we adopted an ordinance, but there's nothing specific in that ordinance. We just, my understanding is that we were looking at a number of different options, and we were going to be moving forward in that, but I don't remember anything specifically about talking specifically about percentages and bedrooms in the motion that we agreed to. We didn't get into that specific detail. It was a general adoption of ordinance. And so I'll go back and check, but I don't remember that level of specificity in anything that was discussed.
Well, in any event, we're going to have to do it again tonight.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, the motion at our last meeting was to approve the ordinance that was presented at our last meeting, which had the 2-bedroom limitation, and subject to final approval following the second reading. So your board did approve that first reading of the ordinance with that 2-bedroom thing at the last meeting. You voted against it, obviously. So, but yes, that same 2-bedroom that was in here in February is still in here in March.
Mm-hmm.
So did we get to a vote on the procedural aspect of waiving the reading?
Okay, so now we can vote?
Now you can call the vote. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay,
So now we need a motion.
No, another good. Okay.
The vote ordinance that it would be adopted as revised, subject to the adoption for second reading.
So moved.
Second. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay. So, thank you.
Yeah, how many trees were cut down for the next agenda item?
Here we go. Okay, so now we're ready for the third item. Right. Consideration of draft permit agreement with the County of San Mateo for GCSD use of plazas in medians in El Granada.
So Jonathan's going to give a report on this. I just want to kind of give an overall statement. This agreement is based on the agreement the county provided to us, and there's a lot of, I don't know what you could say, somewhat call them onerous conditions, but they favor the county. But again, they were the ones that drafted that. In the bigger picture, look at this. We want to make this as smooth as possible, obviously. So, Jonathan and I went through this for literally an hour and a half, but we wanted to make sure we got what we want, which is allowing us to put parks, subject to that list as Exhibit B, on the medians. That's our big picture goal. That's the broader goal. We think this gets us closer to that. So, that being said, Jonathan, if you want to add some legal stuff that's included in here, we're going to focus on.
Just following up on what Chuck was saying in our phone conversation about this for an hour and a half, our guiding principle was, let's try to go along with the county's language to the extent that we can replicate. If there's things that would clarify or there are actual, what appear to be typographical errors, we would correct those or ask that they be fixed. And then if there are some really important issues that we think the district should really ask the county, can't we just have a different approach to this? We tried to limit the number of those, and I think there's probably only 2 or 3 that might be in that category. So that was what we were looking at. And I also want to make sure you're understanding that the redlining is not stuff that they've agreed to yet. And one of the things that makes it a little bit difficult to read sometimes is that we also decided to change permittor and permittee to county is a permittor, and I just said county. Permittee, say Granada, or it's GCSD. It just, hopefully when you read the clean version, which is the version after the red line, it just reads better. You can see it later. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm open to questions at any time here.
I was looking at Delia's cover memo, and I'm really concerned about us having full responsibility for the trees and the improved parts, because if one of the 100-year-old big trees has to be taken out, that could cost $1,000 each, minimum. More likely $3,000 or $5,000. And Chuck Kozak said more than 10 years ago that, quote, most of the trees on the coast side are 90 to 100 years old with an expected lifetime of 90 to 100 years. In other words, they're all about to fall down. And we can't afford to spend $5,000 each dealing with those trees. So I would look for some shared responsibility where we would do more or less minor maintenance on the trees. You know, if there's a branch that looks like it's going to fall down and might hit somebody walking by, but if the tree has to be removed, I want that to remain the county's responsibility.
I remember that what you're asking for is more than they offered by far. I won't say by far, by quite a bit. I remember being pleasantly surprised at how far they did go in terms of keeping the responsibility for trees. I think, is that number 14?
And I think we kind of expected them to drop the burden for the whole median on us, whether we were using it or not. And like Jonathan said, we were pleasantly surprised that they said, no, we've got a median this big and you're only using the top quarter of it for a playground. We're responsible for this, but they're responsible for the rest of the median.
Right.
I saw that.
So it's basically saying on 14, the second sentence there says, if GCSD has only constructed improvements on a portion of the plaza's median, GCSD shall only be responsible for the vegetation, including trees, including within the boundaries of the improvements. And the Director Warren is pointing out is that it would be expensive if a tree goes down there. And on the other hand, if you're the county and we're doing improvements, are we the ones that caused it to come down by whatever activities we did to do improvements? And we're going to agree in writing as to the boundaries of the maintenance responsibility.
So they're basically saying we're going to create this boundary around the perimeter where the main improvements are,
yes.
And everything inside of that, we're fully responsible. Everything outside of that, they're fully responsible.
I think the question.
Maybe we have to define that boundary.
I have spoken to Nicholas Calderon and also Public Works about this. They will still take responsibility for any trees that poses threats to roads. So even if it is within improvements made by the district, they still have responsibility to keep the roads clear. So
if a tree might fall down, but they don't know which direction. I mean, seriously, there's a really serious question. If the tree looks like it's going to fall down
on top of a basketball
in the near future, but it's unpredictable which way it'll fall, are they still going to take care of it?
if that's something they would normally do with or without our improvements, yes.
Well, and that's kind of what he's saying. If it's going to fall in the street, they would take care of it. But if it's going to fall into the basketball court, that's not their responsibility.
Well,
because there are trees that you see that are...
They have, in the past, taken care of trees, though, that have fallen the other way. We've seen that in Portola, so...
And I think a bigger issue here is not a $5,000 tree, because in the grand scheme of things, that's pennies. It's a tree falls down.
Liability,
We have
yeah.
someone on that basketball court.
And
liability.
the trees that pose a danger or any type of hazard will have to be addressed in any type of planning we do for parks, so.
There are two situations here. There's one, we think the tree's going to fall down. It's a serious danger. And I think that's what Leonard's saying also, is we want the county to take that down. If the tree falls down, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's a lot cheaper to remove it if it's it's already on the ground.
Right.
You just chop it up and haul it away.
Actually, they don't
And
haul
the
it away.
insurance covers, if there's damage to a car or people, then that's if you have the $2 million of insurance. But we don't want to pay for every tree that looks like it might fall down.
And I think where the partnership comes in, that was in the past, the tree would fall and it would sit there for 2 years, whatever. Now, if that falls on a main improvement, we're going to be calling the next day, and that's where I think that's
But
where.
if the tree is outside, I'll keep using your basketball court. Because if I did a basketball court, I'd say, all right, here's the limits of our improvement. That obviously would be the basketball court. If the tree is over here 5 feet away and it falls on our basketball court, that's their issue because that's on their located on the median that they're responsible for.
We're gonna have to have fences 10 feet out.
Yeah,
Basketball.
but and that's where it gets confusing. You have a basketball court,
Right.
you have a basketball court, but then you also on the outer perimeter have flower pots and things like that. So then they say everything inside the flower pots is.
What's going to happen is we're going to look at this basketball court. We're going to design it and do what, if it has flower pots or benches or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
We're going to define on a
Separate
drawing,
perimeters.
here's our limited thing. And to some extent, it dictates a little bit of where you want to locate these things. So if you're going to have a toddler park, which has got swings and a slide and a sandbox, don't have a tree in the middle of it, right? I mean, that makes it simple. Then we can define our little playground, trees are outside it, and go from there.
The second paragraph under number 14 says, should county determine in county sole and absolute discretion that a tree or any part of a tree presents a danger to those using the roadway, it goes on, they have the authority or the right to take that tree out. Maybe we should ask to insert or elsewhere, using the roadway or elsewhere. Second paragraph under 14.
What do you mean by or elsewhere?
Well, if there's a tree that looks sketchy and it's leaning toward our basketball court, but it's not, inside the fences we're going to have to put up around the basketball court. If we have one on the median, we put it. I don't think we'll do, but then
If it does indeed fall, though, they are responsible for it.
Now we have,
As defined throughout this agreement.
okay, but now we have to back up to the bigger picture, which circles back around pretty close to where I started. Right now, there's informal footpaths down approximately the center of pretty much all of the medians. And so if we decide to do just a little bit of maintenance to improve those footpaths, then that's going to fall into what the county says we're responsible for, and then we're going to get stuck with dealing with the trees that are close to the footpaths.
No, because that's why I say when you do the project, you're going to look at the project and you're going to decide beforehand, what is the limits of this project? And the limits of that project seem to be pretty easy. If you're 5-foot footpath going through the median, I don't know why to accept 10 feet on either side of the footpath. It's not our improvement, it's the rest of the median. That's the kind of decision-making that has to go into where we situate these improvements and also where we define the limit of improvement with the county.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be pretty difficult. It would be very difficult to attempt in this document to try to address all those situations. But I think they came up with the best solution we can, to say, we will agree in writing as to the boundaries. And the maintenance responsibility.
Yeah, and when we went through this, we were talking about this is going to have to be, like Jonathan says, on a project-by-project basis. Every project's going to be a little bit different on how you define the line of boundary and not.
And I think the key is the time frames, because they're going to be used to working under their time frames where they could get to it in a year or whatever. Whereas now there's going to be more of a proactive urgency. The second thing, to Leonard's point, though, is what about the same question with ADA issues? If we just put a little pitching mound and a backstop and something simple in the middle of it and do nothing else, all of a sudden does that walking path have to have a ADA ramp up it and down it? And
The issue in some part comes down to the county doesn't recognize two of the key words in the ADA. ADA says where practical. The county cannot see those two words when they read it. So the county will claim that you can't build something at all if you can't make it ADA compliant. That's why they won't put an overpass for the parking lot at Graywell Cove, because they say there isn't enough room to put in an ADA compliant ramp. And so because they can't do that, they won't build the bridge at all. But the ADA thing, I think, is a really big deal. If we decide to do the minimal improvements to the informal footpaths that are there now, the way the county's going to come after us with the ADA language here is they're going to say we have to improve all those footpaths to ADA standards, and there will be an armed revolt because people like the paths the way they are. And the county will say that it has to be paved in order to be ADA compliant. I guarantee it will say it has to be paved on an all-weather surface.
But again, I think that's like going back to Jonathan's comment. We can't foresee every possible project and every possible. And this is an agreement we're going to enter into. And if it turns out that once we get into this and we propose 4 projects to them, and they die because we can't agree on a improvement footprint or things like that, then we're going to have to start talking about other things.
And so their idea is there's no specific trigger. It's just going to be, okay, we see where you're going with this one specific median. We're going to make it have a ADA ramp up it and down it because you're already, paving it or whatever else. Versus other projects that are going to say you can just go and add that little pitching mound. You don't need to spend all this money on ADA. Each one's going to be individually approved.
Exactly. That's going to be the discussion for each project, and it's not like we're nailed down. If we get up to a discussion and they say, no, you need a ramp coming to this pitching mound, your board may say, no, that's crazy. We're not going to do that, and there goes the pitching mound. Well, we're not handcuffed.
And to start with, there's a couple curbs in El Granada where if you try to walk a stroller, there's no ramp up it. You have to go around cars, and so it's like if they're so concerned, they should probably start addressing some of those issues where.
Good luck.
Let me toss out another example.
Can we do this one at a time? I didn't feel like we finished trees, but, because Matthew had a suggestion. So I just want to get out here that Director Clark was suggesting after the word roadway or elsewhere, and I was going to suggest or the medians or plazas, because I think that's a really good point that, first of all, it says the county may take necessary action. So they should not be, if it said shall, then I think they would object. But I would think they would want to be able to take down a tree or a part of a tree that could come down on a median or a plaza as well as a roadway. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's outside of our boundary, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we should add that.
So how exactly, after the word roadway, you would put...
Or the medians or plazas.
Okay.
No comma between median or plaza.
All right, the ADA...
We'll leave out some commas in your contract and see what happens. Some comments in the side. I didn't cut glasses.
So for the ADA, what we tried to do, the way the county wrote the ADA is they said, basically, if there were improvements on a plaza or median, then anywhere, then we had to take care of any ADA barriers for the whole median, for the whole plaza. We have
where what section number?
13 at the end of that. You see the change we made? We said any ADA barriers to use or access of improvements installed or constructed on behalf of GCSD. Now, I haven't looked at the exact law of this, but it seems to me we could provide an access that was maybe easier, or we'll choose a location that's easier to get to from an ADA standpoint for our improvements. And it wouldn't be that expensive. The way they had written it, as soon as we put improvements, we had to have ADA access everywhere for that median.
For that median.
Yeah, so that's the tweak we did.
So suppose, let's take Avenue Balboa as an example, since we can see it out the stairwell window. If we were to improve the footpath that's there, say put decomposed granite down instead of the dirt, or on top of the dirt, I should say, then the county's going to look at their ADA paragraph there and say, well, you have to put ramps in at each end where the cross streets are. And so now I can see bicyclists coming down there. See, right now they actually have to jump the curb, which slows them down. But I can see bicyclists coming down there at 60 miles an hour if we put the ramps in.
But what's your opinion? That's the problem.
It's not an obvious solution to that. Maybe,
There's something called kissing gates, they're called, that you can put in at either end of the path that a bicycle cannot get between, and a pedestrian can walk around.
Yeah, you have to take.
They're used all over the
Are
place.
they ADA compliant?
Yeah. Well, you can,
But basically, you have to make a little S when you come into the path.
So somebody in a wheelchair could navigate the ramp that you're
I'm
describing?
not sure, but I think so. I think they can design them that way.
I mean, maybe the thing to do is just offset them so you have to zigzag, at more or less a right angle. Of course,
Yeah.
bicycles just cut their own new path.
But I don't think there's really any choices, frankly. I mean, if we're going to improve a path, we just made an improvement, and I don't think you can say that it's not practical, because we have money.
It's a no-brainer.
So can we put a clause in here that says if we have to put in wheelchair ramps, we pick the color? We're not going to use the county's stinking canary yellow?
No, because we're trying to make this come together.
Yeah.
The more things we throw them away.
Remember, each project's going to be independent, and we can put that down there.
Okay.
If they put in the wrong color, I'll spray things again.
It's been talked about. From the podium, maybe, Jim?
Then, yeah, by all means, get the video.
I'm thinking something more serious than
Introduce yourself, please, like you. Introduce yourself, please, like I
Fran
know you.
Pollard, El Granada,
I know you.
and I'm thinking something more serious than falling on a basketball court. How about if it falls on the houses? There's many of us worried about these over 100-foot tall trees that are slanted, some of them, right towards the houses. And what's going to happen? Who's going to be responsible for that? I've been after the county to start cutting some of those already.
If it's within the boundary of one of our improvements, Jonathan, and it hits a house or a car,
Thank you.
The way this is written, it's our responsibility.
it's our responsibility. So the reality is you would have a better chance if it was a danger of getting this board, certainly it's been situated now, of cutting the tree down rather than the county. So if there was within our improvement of whatever it was on that piece of property and looked like a danger, you could come to the board and say, I think that's a danger, would you consider cutting it down? And then the board would have that decision to make.
So we're going to have project boundaries looking like gerrymandered congressional districts in red states.
Absolutely. So it's going to be.
Okay, if somebody was going to go to something else, I don't know what it was, but if you came here quickly, I'm going to go to the term in 5 and in 7. Because we never got that far. Number 7 is a critical thing to talk about. Because if you read the staff report, you might have gotten the impression that the county had already agreed that there had to be good cause for them to terminate. And that's what we're asking for. That's what the county wrote was that they can terminate. County shall have the right to terminate. And in number 7, the second paragraph, county shall have the right to terminate this permit. And what they had said, at county's sole and absolute discretion without a requirement of good cause. This may be a fight. I mean, they may really want that. I don't know.
Do you have any idea why they might want that?
Sure, because good cause takes time to prove. You can have court battles over it, et cetera, et cetera. They have to build
Why
a
wouldn't
case.
they want it?
Yeah, arbitrary control.
What we are proposing to go back to them with, and it may slow things down in negotiating about it. Let's face that fact. That's why I want to talk about it. Is to have it just read, county shall have the right to terminate this permit with a requirement of good cause at any time upon 120 days prior written notice to GCSD. And I know Chuck feels strongly about this, and I think it was wise to feel strongly about it. I'm not going to speak any more about it, but it's kind of a onerous provision for us if they can just absolute discretion, no cause, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we put, hundreds of thousands of dollars into improvements.
Say goodbye.
And I'm of two minds of this. It's a fantastically onerous provision, obviously, and it's completely arbitrary, which I hate to see in agreements. So I think certainly we'll go to the mat harder on this one than we would on some of these other things. But then I also look at the reality of the situation. If we go start putting improvements in, and whatever, 10 years from now, the county says, "No, we were just kidding, you can't do that stuff." I think there's going to be some kind of public outcry about that we've invested all that money.
And then on top of that, it says that they can require that we revert it back. Like, what?
Right, put the trees back up.
Sure.
Unswing the swings.
Okay.
So we're gonna fight that provision, and hopefully we'll get some traction on that because it is onerous, like John said. Okay.
I'm just going to mention that paragraph 3, we've taken out the long list of uses. We've only said the 2 that they will not allow.
Paragraph
and then we've
3.
referred to Exhibit B. That's where you find the uses. And I just wanted to mention, in case it wasn't obvious, that we put in, and it doesn't really show because they had nothing under Exhibit B. So we put the list that they had in paragraph 3, and then there are some things that were not there. I think restrooms is one of them. I don't remember the other steps, but I just wanted to point out that we're at least going to ask for a few more things. I think it's use and storage of construction and other equipment and materials for use in installation of improvements, more than them.
Can you throw the word temporary in there? Make me happy.
Well, it's our
Yeah.
improvements. So that
Put the word temporary.
But you could leave them there for years and years.
Then it's not temporary.
I know,
But you have
I'm saying,
control
that's
over
why.
No, but we have control over it, so when we write the construction agreement, we say, once we sign off, we've got X number of days, and we won't sign off on a project until they clear the site.
Okay.
It's no different than any other project.
So I have just a general philosophy question here. I can understand, what were the 2 things? Okay, it's really obvious why they said no barbecues. Okay, fine. Why are they saying no disc golf, but allowing other things with flying objects?
Well, that was interesting to me too, because I said you could throw a frisbee around theoretically and not call it disc golf.
But
Put up a chain link thing.
Basketball, softball, pitching mound. I mean, anything.
I think the thought was possibly traffic, but it doesn't. I agree with you. I don't know.
I mean, how much space do you need? I think logically you might need a great deal of space. The only way you could have a competitive game, you'd almost have to use multiple medians, right?
Right.
And just the sheer size of these medians, when you actually walk them, they're actually pretty small. It's hard to, you think you could do tons with them, but then you walk them, they're not as functional because they're sloped.
But I would think that the county's concern is things flying out into traffic and/or people chasing after it into traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to get their feedback though on
We'll
if
ask.
we can.
We can ask.
Yeah. And why, and then did you have anything else on it? Contained it is pretty good.
Yeah, because those could be anywhere.
Yeah. Baseball, there's going to be some type of backstop or whatever. And I think that, to me, I know we talked about things that have been specific, because this doesn't mean that there can't be other proposals. I think one of the things I look at this is how do we go about doing these things with so it's not so much metal type backstops and things. How do we use vegetation and stuff so that can blend in with the different projects we have going on? And then, if that's the case, then what other projects can so I guess same thing, like you can have a baseball pitching mound, but they don't want anything for a soccer net. If you had 2 little soccer goals at the end of each thing, is that something they would say no to as well? Or is that just something we haven't asked?
Yeah. I don't know, and I don't know how, with all the trees on that median, I don't know how suited it is. It's more suited for Mirada surgery.
Yeah.
So don't we need some language in number 3 to have a procedure for adding to Exhibit B?
Just amend the contract.
But, and all I was gonna say, is there anything against saying that, assuming that they approve the use and it, goes with the median, that just you making one of these sentences, kind of anything else to be determined that we both agree to, rather than limiting us to
Can you
these
add
items.
something, Jonathan, then to approved improvements include blah, 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 and then on the bottom, or as otherwise approved by the county? Something like that.
But it seems like
Then we can do that in the case
you're
by
playing
case.
disc golf, maybe the medians really aren't the appropriate thing for that. If we have these other properties, we're talking about
Yeah.
business and school property. If it's an open space, it's just going to be easy.
Right.
You're trying to play like, it'd be like a long skinny golf course, and you never have those. They're all kind of,
Well, and there's a difference between a basketball bounding down the street and a frisbee flying and hit you in the windshield as you're driving along. So
Yeah.
I get that.
so anyway, okay.
And then what about the half court in terms of, you could have the same size court and have two different, hoops at the end of it. Is there something, was that specific? They said it could only be half court, or is that something where, so if you have two hoops, so I would just say, why restrict that? If it ends up being half court, it ends up being half court, but if you could do a project to just a smaller scale version of two hoops on each end, I think that would be, exponentially.
Well, and
That could come under or as otherwise approved by the county that we're going to add to the fee.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if they didn't ask for that specific language, we added that. I would prefer to just say youth basketball courts.
No.
And just-
No, but that was in their original language under number 3.
Yeah, but it was our.
Oh, in number 3.
Okay.
So yeah, I would just say why if we're adding that, I would propose we just take that out, youth basketball courts, and then it ends up being half court anyways, whatever. At least And I don't know why. I don't see why we should be as restrict ourselves if we don't have to.
So just change it to youth basketball. Yeah. And we'll decide what youth is.
Yeah.
You always build a full court and just paint a line down the middle and say, don't cross this line.
That's right.
Okay?
I just want to say that because I've been through a few of these kinds of things, and I understand that the primary desire here is to get something going. We can negotiate this back and forth forever, so I hope that you're ultimately going to tell Chuck, ask for these things, but here's some things to fight for, but if they won't say it, because I think the way this is really going to work out in real life is hopefully we're going to get an agreement in a couple months. That'd be very optimistic, but yeah, we've got to go back and forth and we get it. We're going to pick a couple of these projects and we're going to do them and we're going to prove to them that we're a good partner for them. We're working well with them, and then you watch it will open up. It'll be, okay, yeah, we could do that.
But the point is get this approved and get it started.
If you get too hung up on we got to fight for all these things right now, I think it'll take too long. Might be stuck on that.
Yeah, so, like Jonathan said, we can ask for that. They may stick to their guns and ask for youth basketball.
Yeah,
That's
but it
fine.
sounds like we added that to begin with, so
Right.
they'll be fine. I think Jonathan's point is more going to be the 120 days. Is that something we feel we're putting?
Those are some of the issues.
I think that's, and then the trees, to me, I look at the trees, it's like a business partnership, you just do a bunch of what-if scenarios. I think that's, the way we solve that is, I think it's like these different scenarios in terms of, we don't really know, but we can get a good idea of the timeframes of how.
Yeah,
how that's
this
gonna
has to
change.
be so necessarily broad.
Yeah.
And then we get into the details of the individual project. So what I think what's going to happen here is, based on your input from this discussion, and
Of course I do, but maybe move along. Let me just say that legally, we are being more strict than they are for our benefit on indemnification. If you read the red part there, you
what
see
numbers are
it's number 10. And we're saying that our duty to indemnify does not apply to any injury, damages, loss, blah, 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 resulting from an occurrence outside the improved median area shall not apply to any claims that do not result from the improvements described in Exhibit B. Those are new things, and then the risk manager may say, no, we can't live with that. We tried to make it reasonable, I would say. It seems like we shouldn't be responsible for stuff that is outside of what we've done, the improvements we've made or outside of the improved areas, the boundaries.
What if county personnel do something in an improved area that causes calamity?
Then that should come under, found by a court of competent jurisdiction to be solely liable by reason of the county's own negligence or workman's misconduct. But the way they wrote it, it'd have to go through court. But you can usually negotiate those things if you can say, hey, you want to go through court? Okay, we'll go through court. But it's going to be found that it is on you.
Are you finished with section 10? I wanted to go back.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to section 8. Is there anything in section 8 that gives a short-term exemption to construction equipment and materials? I mean, the way this is written, you can't store a 5-gallon can of gas there for the equipment you're using to improve the trail.
That might not be a bad idea to ask for that. Well, we started thinking, grease and oil qualify as hazardous materials. There are alternatives that are not hazardous materials. We ended up deciding not to get into a fight over that.
I really think there needs to be some,
wouldn't hurt to
some recognition that small quantities for
construction improvements.
that will maybe on site temporarily during construction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Okay.
I was wondering about barbecues. I'm back to 3 now.
Are you going to argue in favor of barbecues under firecrackers?
Like one step forward.
No, I'm going to, there's no definition of what a barbecue is. I would think they're getting at the district shouldn't build permanent, brick or barbecue facilities like a lot of parks have. But after we put in nice benches and tables on some of these medians and plazas, if a neighbor wants to bring his kettle barbecue down there on a Saturday and have a barbecue, are they prohibiting all things like that? That's what this is about.
What we call it improvements.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Wouldn't that fall under? Yeah, it's not our.
Whatever the law is now, if they can enforce that.
Well, it's that prohibits us putting in a barbecue as an improvement. That prohibit some guy down the street. Now they might have some other prohibition somewhere, but the guy, what the guy down the street does on his own is his business and ours. Okay, good.
Okay, I'm moving along here. Insurance, we also just tightened that up a little bit. I'm not going to get into detail about it, but that is another area where there might be some discussions that might be a little contentious. So I'm all the way up to page 29. I'll mention that there are a couple of things that we took out of here that may look like we took a lot out. They must have borrowed this from a lease because they kept referring to sections that are in lease law as to what damages you could get and that kind of thing. Anyway, page 29, we deleted the signs and auctions provision because, first of all, we don't have any auctions like this. Signs, it seems like we should, this just says shall not place, it's not even worded clearly enough to know if we could do it with their prior written consent. But it seems like we should be able to put signs up. At least we ought to ask for that. That's the only other, so what does the board feel about that? It says committee, that's the GCSD shall not place any sign upon the plazas and medians. Or conduct any auction therein without, we're missing one, it's without committee's prior written consent.
Well, I think we have to be able to put up some small signs referring to policies, you know.
And even temporary, if there's an event or something, or a temporary event.
Or temporary closure,
Yeah.
put up a sign.
You know, if they want to limit the size of the signs, that's fine. And the county does very commonly limit the size of signs. But we have to be able to put up some types of signs.
Yeah, I'm not sure how hard they'll find that.
Yeah.
I think they will.
Are they worried about us calling it, Granada meeting in the park and it's not?
No, I think to Jonathan's point, I think they just stole this from a lease and plugged it in there, and no one really read it closely or thought much about it, and why not keep it in there?
Especially when you get to the back where it's mostly boilerplate.
Yeah.
People don't read that.
But we can let them ban auctions.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So,
Whether it's auction to raise funds for the park.
President Blanchard, I don't know, we haven't given an opportunity.
Well, wait, that wasn't actually as frivolous as it might have sounded. Silent auction is a very common way of raising money for these kinds of facilities.
So we have deleted that provision that said they are prohibiting that. So,
And if they ask you why, just say silent auction.
So, kind of from a big picture standpoint, Jonathan's right, you've got some public who may want to speak on this,
Yes,
but what our goal here is, we've kind of given you the background on this. Jonathan and myself, Jonathan's going to go back and meet with the county and go through this. Obviously, we'll figure out what we can get, what we can't get, and we'll bring it back to your board and show you what we got or didn't get, and you can consider it again.
Can we go back to page 23, paragraph 18 for a second? If we only meet once a month.
You go back to like item 2.
The 30 days, which is increased from the county's 15 days, is still short in terms of scheduling agenda items for monthly board meetings. I think
Where were you?
number 18, default remedies, I think the 30 days, and I'm not sure if this shows up anywhere else, but the 30 days really needs to be like 45 days to make sure we can get it on an agenda.
So let's go to 60. Because all these were way short.
And so then some of the 60s might need to be longer.
double everything there.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah. I don't think so. Okay. Okay, so
Are we done?
you want to call for public
Does
comment?
anybody wish to speak on the park media? Okay, thank you. So then, do we need?
You don't need a motion?
Nothing here.
We'll negotiate with the
Negotiate.
county and bring it back.
Okay, come back, thank you. So, okay, fine, thank you. So, well, thank you for your vote and help. Okay, so now we go on to item 4. A consideration of sewer main relocation plan over the Meadow Creek Bridge crossing.
Jonathan refused to do the agenda amendment on this, so I'll have to.
Thank you.
I took some photos, I don't know, Monday or something that I think are better photos than the ones that the engineer took and supplied.
I'd agree with that. Not even having seniors.
So
I actually would.
So they're on my phone. I could email them to Delia and she could try and print them right now. There's 5 photos that I'd have to.
Well, I'm not sure we have to get into that level. Certainly email them to Delia and then she can circulate them to all of you. And I've got some photos too, because I agree, I was only saying half joking, they have to be better than engineers, because when I went out there, I went, no, it kind of looks worse.
Well, I looked at the engineer's photos, and in a lot of cases, you can't even tell what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Are you still going to stand by your claim of a few years ago that the bridge is never going to fall down?
I was thinking about that on the way up. The bridge is still intact.
No, it's not. Half of it's
still
gone.
there. The pipe's a little wobbly, but
no, half of the
wobbletti.
half of the
Yes, I had to do that.
Half of the concrete bridge
I've got
is
more
either
of that hung up.
on the beach or washed away.
It's still there.
And while it's mostly shear walls that are gone, now the underside of the bridge is exposed. And I
Matthew,
think
would you like to make a motion stating that the bridge is indeed?
A lot of the bridges.
You talked to Jonathan before the meeting, obviously.
Some of the parts of the bridge that should be there are no longer there.
Yes.
now,
I may have to backtrack on that.
when the county installed the pedestrian bridge, it was intentionally made something like twice as long as the old concrete bridge, on the thought that if they put this big bridge here, the old concrete bridge could fall down and the pedestrian bridge would remain intact. And so I wonder if we should ask our engineer for an opinion on the viability of the pedestrian bridge, because, maybe we can just attach the pipe to the pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, well, we're looking at a whole bunch of options on that, so let me give kind of the first part of my report on what's happened to the bridge. I think all of you have gone out there and seen the bent pipe, and
Actually, where exactly is the pipe bent? I missed that.
seriously?
I may have a photo of it, but didn't understand
Right,
what it was.
basically right in the middle of the bridge where the
Actually, it's closer to the south end.
closer to that bed and breakfast. You always say it's not a bed and breakfast, and that's what that's what I said of that. Yeah, but it's closer to that end. But it's a significant. I put an eyeball on it. It looks to be 8 inches off what would be a straight line.
Maybe I didn't
So
realize
there's
that.
2 issues that are happening. There's a bunch of issues, obviously. The first issue is that bend in the pipe. So where it used to go straight, it has bent the bracket supports and has moved about 8 inches. The other issue is where the existing pipe is extending out of that area to the north.
No, that's not his. His is a lot further up.
I don't know who owns that house there, but anyway, to the north, where it eroded away, we have our pipe sticking out there, and probably another 8 feet away is our manhole. So, we're looking at a bunch of things. Looking at the
Are you saying bend is there?
Yeah.
no,
No, that's the north end.
Okay, so the
bend
bend
is
north
somewhere
and
in the middle.
south.
I don't want to go through pictures because then I was going to see.
Oh, I didn't think about it. Yeah, but you can really see the bend even in this little.
So I take it back. The engineer's pictures are better than yours.
Actually, it's an
So
angle.
technically now, Director Warren, you have to offer in the public a chance to see that.
And everything on your phone. Zoom in.
How tight can you get on that picture? Because, yeah, you really can see the bend at the bottom there.
So anyway, so we've got the bend in the pipe. That area is sloughed off. When you look at the creek, it's pretty obvious why it's sloughed off that way, and it's too bad. There are 2 giant eucalyptus that fell in there, God knows how long ago, and it took that creek that was running straight down here and was hitting this side of the abutment going out to the ocean, and you can see that's where they put all the riprap and the protection back whenever. Those 2 trees hit, they literally are diagonal to the flow of the stream, and it sent all that stream water straight to that other side of the abutment that was unprotected. And, I could kick myself because when the county did their first emergency riprap, I was going to ask them to kind of wrap around because I was afraid, I didn't notice those 2 trees because of the water at the time. But, I didn't, and now they've got that area is really sloughing off.
Can we suggest that they send their public works guys out with their chainsaws? I mean, the county public works guys here own chainsaws.
They're half buried, and I don't know what kind of permits you have to go down.
Just throw one of the crap comment.
The trees are down in the base of the creek.
As part of the original,
Get them out. Yeah.
as part of the original construction permit for the alleged bed and breakfast, which was never used as a bed and breakfast, was that the owner had to acknowledge that there was erosion, and he was proscribed by law never to riprap his property. front of that B&B. Right after we sold the property to somebody else immediately, the guy came in with a big truck and started dumping riprap, and we called the county police had to come out and say, stop doing that, and by the way, pick up every stone that we just dropped off that thing. So I don't know if the county is possibly operating on that assumption that part of the original agreement was, okay, you're saying it's not going to be a road, so therefore you can never put a rock down to protect that building, which would probably include that curb.
Well, and I think they're focused on the building and not on our sewer main, obviously. And I haven't approached them and said, I don't care about the building, I care about our sewer main. Certainly in the short term, so it doesn't go down. So John Rayner has gone out there and he's trying to figure out some fixes. He's talked to Andrini Brothers. He's gotten in contact with the original guy who put that pipe in. So
Original guy?
Powers Construction.
The GCSD pipe that was put in about 97?
Yeah.
Found the guy.
So anyway, we're trying to figure out, how we can shore this up. I was laughing. I throw a couple more straps on an anchor to that pedestrian bridge, certainly post pronto, but that seems to be way too easy and obvious for the engineers.
Did you notice the pedestrian?
I wanted to get some rope from the hardware store.
Did you notice the pedestrian bridge has on each side some empty pipes of varying diameters?
I saw those pipes. I didn't know what they were for, but
I think it's the kind of thing you throw in
you
need them in the future.
Right. If bad stuff happens, we've got a few contingency plans. One is to just use that last manhole as a wet well and temporarily set a pump up in there and pump up to the manhole, which is 50 yards away up the street. It's not the perfect solution, but it's better than spilling sewage. The other one is to, strengthen that pipe somehow or run some kind of temporary pipe. So he's weighing our options. So as you all know, this draft technical memo that is part of an older project. The first part of that project was when we put the Naples Beach pump station, which used to send 45,000 gallons a day over that bridge. We turned that force main pipe up to Route 1, and that took 90% of the load off that bridge. Part two that we contemplated at the time was removing that last little piece because there's, I forget what it is, 10 or 15 houses that are still connected via gravity that go over that bridge. So John dusted off his memo. I gave your board a relatively brief explanation of what we were looking at doing at the January meeting. So John has moved ahead. Our preferred option is to redo the gravity section so we don't put a pump station down in that area. So there's two options. One is to redo the gravity stuff to make everything flow to Naples Beach so no flow goes over the bridge. The second option is to turn that manhole into a more permanent pump station of some type, pump it up to wherever it goes to gravity, do that. We'd rather not do that because it's one more pump station, more things to fail. Either option's good, quite honestly, because that pump station would be a tiny pump station. We could put it in a couple extra manholes and get 10,000 gallons of emergency storage to the pump station there, so it's not a big deal. We'd still rather go all by gravity. Right. So the big pain in the neck is going to be getting the permit from state parks. John has started that process already. He's been in contact with them.
Is that a new easement, or to just go deeper where there's already a line?
I guess it's a lengthwise county parks easement. I don't know the area.
But do we have a main there that you're looking at just putting a deeper one in?
No. There's a new section of main that has to go there. And he's got a drawing at the back of it. Yeah. That shows you the intersection drawing. What he's looking at doing.
To me, the gravity flows just makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what the only like I said. The only hang up is dealing with state parks, and hopefully that won't be a big deal. We're researching some of their old permits for some of their old state park buildings. I guess there's a state park building that's on the cliff that may not be on the cliff very long.
Well, I forgot to go by and look to see if it's still there because the state parks is under pressure to take it down before it falls into the ocean.
Right, and it looked like a corner of the road. So At any rate, like I reported at the January meeting, he is pursuing the state parks alignment until it hits a dead end, and then if it hits a dead end, it's a good option too. So.
Well, state parks in the past has been cooperative. I mean, the Naples Beach pump station sits on land owned by state parks.
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't be. It's just that obviously you're dealing with the county or the state. It's a longer process, and we'd like to get this project moving. I wanted to get the project moving 3 months ago, and that was before that hillside eroded. So
I wanted to get it moving 18 years ago.
Are there any state parks restrooms that go into our system?
we have to believe so.
Well,
And we've got other negotiating strengths.
In fact, just telling you, it looks like that this pump pressure, it's going to be flowing directly across the property. I think it's fine.
Yeah, so that's the path we're headed on, so I'll keep you all up to date.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much.
So, looking at this map here, Silly Me says, why can't you connect this dead end of, I don't know, is that a private lateral or whatever the heck
That's
that is,
ours.
connected over this way?
It's that whole gravity thing, that uphill thing.
But if it's going to go around in a circle, it's still going to end up downhill one way or another.
I don't know what he's doing with that, because I think he's going deeper with that line.
Okay, but if it's going to flow by gravity around the long way, it'll also flow by gravity the short way.
I'll let you take that up with John.
Send me his phone number.
Okay?
when he says at the bottom of the schedule here, as well as other needed system-wide CIP improvements such as total construction cost is at least in the range of $750K to $1 million. That I read that to mean not if we do the companion project north of the creek and this, whichever.
That refers to
doing some other projects elsewhere not connected to this.
Yes, we had an issue back when where we TV'd those lines, and I think I reported to your board about this, but it was like 6 months ago, where the lines were corroded, and it was on is it Murata Road that passes in front of that B&B? Yeah. Murata Road continues? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Murata Road.
the condition of that pipe is really bad, but it's one of those things, God, do I want to go in and spend $125,000 to replace it because I'm taking a load off it by not crossing the bridge, and then I'll only have 2 or 3 houses on it.
Can you say CIPP or something?
Well, that's what I'm looking at, is can rather than replace the entire pipe, can we pocket patch it with the new thing? They put a balloon in place and it seals out the new thing. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But that's what he's referring to, the extra stuff. So I don't know that that's worth $500,000 for 4 houses on it to fix it.
Well, yeah, that's what
I asked
that
him
was
to
my
just kind of
question.
I asked him to give me a cost estimate so I could look at it. You know, if it was $100,000, we might start looking at it. If it's $500,000, it's like,
Well, yeah, I don't see how it possibly could be because the two alternatives on the other side of the creek are what, 352,000 and 362,000, and that's a lot more work,
right,
than that line that runs in Murata Road.
right. So
So
I just
would-
asked him to give me a ballpark on it. We're gonna we can treat it as a separate project. Just said, while you're doing this, give me something on that.
You know about the bypass stations on the ITS?
Yes.
Maybe we need to look at mini versions of that in this area, so you don't have to do the manhole wet well pumping into another manhole thing, but just connect up a hose and drill a valve. I have no idea what very small versions of the bypass stations would cost.
I don't even understand your issue. I'm not replacing a section of the pipe.
But in case you have to work on it and there's there's an emergency failure and you have to route around it, you just connect up a flexible pipe between bypass stations.
Yeah, but that's the same thing as the manhole. The manholes are close enough that we don't need it.
Okay.
All right, so then. Thank you, Chuck. Okay, so are we done?
Yep, we're done.
Okay, so now we have item 5. Consideration report by District Sewer Authority Bidco side representatives.
I always like it when Rick does the report.
Well, I can do the first one, but I was in the hospital for a while. I put the second one. I could do the January 23rd to February. The biggest time item on the January 23rd one is we had the local San Mateo County Resource Conservation District made a huge presentation on their first flush water quality results. The first flush took place on October 14th with all the wonderful volunteers like were here. The first rain, everybody runs down after being trained how to take samples. All the samples were taken, and she just showed this huge presentation on, by stream, what was the best. I don't have all the results with me. They're available, I'm pretty sure, on their website.
And you might be able to see it on the video, but a lot of the print's probably too small to see on the video.
It was just a very complete, by type of chemicals, metals, pollutants, bacteria, like 15 to 20 stations we have now.
Sampling locations, yeah, it was
All the way down to 3.
somewhere in the teens.
Yeah, and we added some for half a day, so I was going to check it out here. There were some definite hot spots. Some of the places had very extreme level results, and people aren't necessarily sure why. Some of those, but I think it was a good foundation to look at in the future. It goes down to, I think the next big one was there's been a lot of discussion about the current hydraulic modeling that we have for the entire sewer system here on the coast. Granada and Montero have been more pushing for just an update of what we have. Half Moon Bay has been pushing for a complete project about 3 or 4 times expensive. So I think at that meeting we actually authorized them to at least go out and request for proposals. We didn't authorize the big study yet. So that's just a guess to get the costs.
I wonder if this is something you could see if John Rayner has an opinion on. Half Moon Bay, for some reason, wants to start from scratch with a brand new hydraulic model, and the rest of us are saying, why don't you just update the one we have now? So,
well, as I explained to your board before, we never start from scratch because there's always inputs that have been developed in the past and whatnot. I asked Beverly about this at a last manager's meeting, and I said, are they modeling the individual agency systems as well? And she said no. And so now I'm completely lost. I don't know how you do a hydraulic model because the SAM system, the only 3 inputs are Half Moon Bay, Montero, and us. So if you don't know what I'm putting in, because it only matters during the storm event, obviously, if you don't know what I'm putting in during the storm event, what the hair is, I didn't get into detail on it because I just didn't. Don't understand where they're going with it, don't know what problem they're solving.
Well, it could potentially save us a bunch of money if we can get a good argument for why there's no point in starting from scratch.
I guess our question would be, what is the problem they're looking at? What's the problem they're solving? What issue have they had? I mean, we kind of decided when we built the overflow tanks, however long ago that was in the Burnham Strip, that the best model is the real world, where it rains like heck and we see how much of that we fill up. Because everything else is, you're guessing how much, we just had a giant rain down in my district down south. We had 3.2 inches, which is a ton for us. The record in San Diego is like 3.5. So in other sections of our district, it's 4.2.
We've had 3 inches of rain in one day here.
Well, that was one day for us too. We're not used to it. So So our treatment plant literally flowed at 5 times its normal flow. So that's never happened before, and we've had big rains before, but, you always say one guy has a house whose lateral crosses into a stream and takes the cap off. That's a 3-inch pipe flowing into your system, and I can't calculate how much water that is. So,
I think what's going to happen is we're going to get the results back of this. And
You mean the RFP?
Yeah, but I think didn't Half Moon Bay even offer to pay the Delta fee?
I don't think so.
I still have these hospital things going on.
Well, I don't remember that part. I was just annoyed that they kept pushing so hard for starting over.
Sure. Some other business occurred because of Half Moon Bay election. They had switched the members, and that was for Rick Walsh's last meeting. We had a honorary plaque for him, which we read, for his years of service there. Those are pretty much, we've been continuing on at the time. SRT, talked about an alternative analysis they were doing and stuff, so that's for the recycled water project.
I think the one thing that you do want to comment on is at the bottom of page 71, and then there's more on that, I think, at the next meeting. Although I've kind of lost track of which things happen at which meeting. But CCWD basically has said they want to expand SRT's scope of work to encompass building a recycling facility that will that will treat to a level for potable reuse all of the SAM plant output.
And there were some side conversations around the original agreement signed by all the parties was that a certain amount, since all of our agencies are contributing work and money to this, but it's important for the community. But the current phase sends all the water to Half Moon Bay. That in the big agreement we signed, like up to 40% could be reserved or something for moving water north. There wasn't a plan for the project, it would be a separate project. And then at this meeting, CCWD said, well, we're interested in taking all the water. And everybody's saying, well, wait a minute. There's other things we need to talk about that. The project wasn't designed just to help Half Moon Bay. If there are any ways to pump water north, we got lots of places that need recycled water up here. Whether we use pipes, whether we put little mini plants up here. Again, as long as everybody's paying for it, it's not what Half Moon Bay is taking care of, and so Granada and Montero on their own. Thanks for helping us, and now you will build your own plants up there. So I don't think that has been totally resolved yet. The idea of sending it all, either treating it with reverse osmosis to provide recycled water that's actually potable or can be shipped to the CCWD processing for final processing. In case San Francisco gets cut off or we get cut off in San Francisco, now we'll have some alternatives. So it's a good safety plan once you work out all the details.
And the San Francisco water is just going to keep getting more and more expensive.
So I turn it over to you, Glenn.
I think the most notable thing in the February 13th meeting was that we did go into what they call storm mode, where they use the overflow storage in Montero and Granada. And if I recall, it doesn't show in the minutes, but if I recall, Tim said that the Montero facility was full and the Granada facility was at 80%. So we may need to start looking at extending it. When we did the current Granada project, we bought the land and figured that we do the 200,000 gallon facility and see if that was sufficient and arrange things such that it could be expanded in the future. And now that we have the extra parcel to the north, there's probably a cheaper way to extend it, which could go that direction instead of putting in something to the south and having to cross the waterways and all that. So I think that maybe we should have an agenda item for this board to discuss whether we want to allow that for as a SAM project, extending it to the north if SAM is interested. And then if this board says okay, then the SAM reps can bring it up at the SAM board meeting and say, well, if we need to expand it, here's a cheaper way to go. So, maybe you can put that on a not too distant future agenda. And even though it's not in our district, I always question these things where the count-off lift station, which is in Montera, and it's I think it's an important one. The PG&E power went out and the generator didn't start, even though the generator had recently been tested. And as a SAM director, I don't like hearing things like that. So I asked them for a future report on single points of failure. Where in the system are there things that there's only one of, but if it fails, we're in trouble.
And just so you know, Leonard, that I saw you guys somewhere did some kind of capital plan. Has that gone to the board yet? SAM capital plan?
Not a final version. I think we just had an outline of what it might look like.
I had sent to Beverly the notes from our walkthrough 3 years ago with all the engineers from all 4 agencies. And the low-hanging fruit was exactly that. That what happens if you've got a generator at a pump station and it doesn't fire off? What can you do? What system do you have? And we talked about having what we call quick couplings. If it failed, you've got a Godwin pump that you can pull up on a trailer, quick couple it to it, and off it goes. And there's other options too. So that might be something when you're talking about your capital plan. You bring that up, and I sent all that stuff on to Beverly a couple weeks ago.
So at the same board meeting I was just reporting on February 13th, that's where we made the final decision that CCWD wanted to expand SRT's scope, and SAM board said, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to pay for it, and we don't want to put the permit at risk and the timeline at risk. And so if you want to contract separately with SRT, feel free. So that's where we officially left that, is CCWD is completely free to contract with SRT for the expanded scope of work. So are you saying you were at February 27th meeting?
I think I started that one and I realized
somewhere in here, I think there is a note saying when you left the meeting. Okay, so yeah, here's I guess the discussion Chuck was referring to, the draft 5-year infrastructure plan, and I think we're going to have a more detailed, concrete version of that come back. That's my recollection, anyway. And I guess that's... Wait, is there another meeting? March 13th. So we have the agenda here and not the minutes, but anything you want to comment on?
Well, it was just what I said. We received financial statements as they stand. We've been having some off-site meetings for a strategic plan, and they presented the draft of the strategic plan, our mission, our goals, all those kind of stuff we do all the time. And then we authorized the payment of the new conveyor system for $37,000.
Actually, I guess the big deal is 8D.
So, because we had an overflow here last week, we authorized SRT for another design service to fix the Granada force main, replacing the pipe and stuff like that.
So this was a hole in the force main along Highway 1 at, I think, Furtado.
Whatever the street, one north of Edo.
And the previous leaks, which usually occur 7 to 10 days before an election, those were like dime size. This one, I think they said it was the size of a tennis ball, and it didn't happen at election time. So this force main is in serious trouble, and instead of doing the CIPP, cured in place? What's the other P for? Cured in place?
We looked this up last time. It's either pipe or pipe.
Well, the CIPP, basically, they start out with a plastic sock and they blow it in and it turns inside out, and then they heat it up and it solidifies inside and makes a nice, smooth liner that seals the pipe. But for some reason, they're saying they can't do that this time on this bigger segment. And they actually intend to pull out the pipe that's in there now and drop another pipe in.
Using the right gasket.
Yeah, that's going to be an expensive project. It doesn't say on here, but if I recall, that was upwards of $1 million.
And the last item was they've been looking at bidding the new entire pipe system software for all the maintenance collection systems, all the pipes. It's the same thing like you have here. They evaluated 3 and ended up with a list 5. So we asked, what they thought about ours and everything like that, but they had more references to use about it. So we authorized them to just keep going on.
You might think $56,000 for software is expensive, but we're paying maintenance costs on the software we have now that after a little more than 2 years, it makes up for the purchase price on the new software.
Well, the only question I have on that would be, in light of the recent letter from Half Moon Bay, which stated that they may be looking to outsource their collection services. Do we want to be entering it? I know the timing was bad on that because we don't know when their letter went out, but maybe something you want to take a look at.
Oh, is that why Half Moon Bay was arguing against this new software?
Well, it just makes no sense because they were talking about buying a new truck as well. The flux of Half Moon Bay, looking at another user. A lot of money to spend.
Okay. Any more discussion? Thank you, Leonard and Rick. And so now we're on to the consent agenda. So we have a motion to accept it.
I want to ask a question on one of the line items on warrants. It doesn't require any discussion. I just, on the very first line, SSO claim, what happened that was this district's fault?
What are you looking at there?
The very first warrant.
They thought that it was qualified as instruction, but it sounds like they were not questions and I'm not sure what happened,
It was one of it was one of those where the sewage exploded through their bathroom toilet and sprayed everywhere, and it was $1,500. And by the time we were done talking about it, I would have spent another $1,500 figuring out what really happened and who did. It was just good customer service. I looked at it and thought, there's no way that guy flushing his toilet would have caused that explosion of that amount of sewage coming out. So whatever the reason, I don't think it was theirs. So.
Well, even if we went ahead and paid it, as we're about to do, it sounds like it might still be useful to know exactly what happened.
Well, it would be, but I don't know.
You know, in my business, there's this old expression: problems that go away by themselves come back by themselves.
I don't know, Sean, the sewer lines are 8 feet underground. I don't know what happened. No, this isn't Peru. I'm not crawling down through them. And I just want to make one correction to the minutes on the closed session. Reconvene to open session. That should say no reportable action taken.
Oh, I thought you were going to throw a comment in somewhere.
I'll do it later.
All right, if nobody else is going to pull anything for discussion, I move approval of, I've lost my place, February 16th, item 6, February 16th meeting minutes, item 7, March warrants for $136,917.35, item 8, January 2015 financial statements, item 9, assessment district distribution number 8-16/17.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving ahead. Now we have the committee reports.
Just real quick, I went to the last meeting Wednesday, and it was kind of more of a bureaucratic one. There weren't any big decisions or big studies. They just did the second pass of the budget. There's some slight increases in the budget due to the fact we're trying to move from 1.5 people to 2 people to handle all these big studies we do all the time. So that's really an actionable item.
And thank you, Rick. And then we have the attorney's report.
Your report.
Okay, thank you. General manager's report.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Administrative staff report.
I just like to let you know that we will be circulating our purpose resource conservation district as a top 10. We're doing inventory of the property, education, hydrologic, and we hope to have it and then I also
Did you tell them that we now have 0.83 more acres?
yeah, I will basically but I have to report to Dwayne. And then I'm not sure if part of the or not, but the county is asking for residential businesses who have some storm damage to report to them so that they could ask for disaster relief from FEMA. So I went ahead and done that, and then the second application for the possibility to be included.
You mean like the Medio Creek?
Are the exploding toilet? How do we know?
And I just wanted to remind directors that still need your Form 700.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
I got a letter from which one, maybe it's just the special districts group. They have a new online version, and it's good for like multiple agencies and all that.
You have to pay $1,000.
I thought it was like free.
No.
What's it for, Rick?
For completing your Form 7.
But the PDF that was sent out with the right viewer, you could type into it and save it in print. And you've
gone to like 2 lines on that.
And you've always been able to fill it out for multiple agencies by listing the bigger one first. So I always fill it out for Sam and then list GSD, GCSD as the second.
Yeah, this was totally online. You
Yeah,
just submit the whole thing online. I can write 2 lines.
Exactly, for $1,000, right?
Okay, thank you, Deanna. And the last item is the engineer's report.
Which I covered under the Murata.
Thank you very much. Okay. So now we are ready to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for attending.
9:35. I was trying to make you feel better.